You begin by noticing the simplest rhythm, the quiet pulsing that rises and falls within your chest, your heartbeat, steady and gentle, carrying you through each moment. And as you focus on it, you realize that this beat, this constant rise and fall, is a kind of clock, a measured time that belongs only to you. And yet, even as you rest with it, you know there are other clocks around you. The faint tick of a watch, the sweep of a second hand, the quiet shift of shadows on the wall, and all of them together weave the sense of time you carry, a river that seems to flow endlessly in one direction, from past to present to future, smooth and unquestioned. And for now you allow yourself to drift along this river, feeling the calmness of its current. You think of the seconds that pass like grains of sand, soft and steady, each one dissolving into the next, and you notice how natural this feels, as though time is woven into your very being, guiding not only your body but your thoughts, your sleep, your waking, your memories and dreams. And yet beneath this natural rhythm lies a mystery, a secret that science has uncovered. That time is not always so steady, not always the same for everyone. That time can stretch and bend, speed and slow, depending on how you move, how you exist within the universe. And you pause here, holding on to that thought gently, not as a puzzle but as an invitation, a reminder that the quiet ticking you feel inside is part of a much larger, stranger symphony. You breathe slowly and let your mind wander back to simpler measures of time, the swing of a pendulum, steady and hypnotic, each arc a heartbeat of physics, or the dripping of water from a stone fountain, drop after drop marking seconds long before gears and dials were made, or the rise of the sun and the falling of night, the oldest clock you know, steady yet always shifting, seasons circling, days repeating, the earth itself turning as though it too follows a rhythm. You see yourself standing under the stars, gazing upward at the slow wheel of constellations, and you feel how time stretches there, how a star may rise and set in your lifetime, but its journey across space is millions of years long. And so you hold both scales at once, the fleeting heartbeat and the ancient star, both bound to time, both flowing the same river but at different speeds. You notice how personal time feels, the way a joyful moment seems short, slipping by too quickly, while waiting or sorrow stretches endlessly. And you realize that even before science revealed its mysteries, you already knew that time was flexible, at least in feeling, that it was not the same in every moment. And perhaps this is why the idea that time itself can change, not just in perception but in reality, feels both strange and familiar. You breathe again, steady, and allow yourself to picture the idea of clocks racing, clocks ticking differently depending on how they move. And though you do not yet step fully into the science, you sense the edges of it. You sense that what feels absolute may not be, that what feels constant may bend. And this thought leaves you calm, curious, open. You let yourself drift into the awareness of cycles, the way your body carries circadian rhythms, guiding you to wake with light and rest with darkness, the way your cells follow chemical clocks that tick without your noticing. And you see how even within you time is layered, multiple rhythms moving together. In the world outside, time flows in layers too, some fast, some slow, all interwoven. And it comforts you to think that you are carried by this complexity without needing to control it, just as a leaf floats on a river, trusting the current. You reflect on the word now, how fleeting it is, how each time you notice it, it has already slipped into the past. And yet you still hold on to the sense of the present, a moment where your breath happens, your thoughts form, your body rests, and you understand that now is your anchor, the place where all rhythms meet, even if science will later show you that now is not universal, that someone moving differently from you may live in a different slice of time. You pause with this realization and let it soften you rather than unsettle you, for it shows that even the most ordinary heartbeat is tied to the deepest mysteries, that your quiet rest of night is already connected to the strange and beautiful physics that waits to be unfolded. You imagine lying back, listening to the tick of a clock in a room, each sound a step forward, each sound a reminder of motion, and you let yourself picture what a clock really is, not just numbers on a dial, but something that marks change, the swing of a pendulum, the vibration of a crystal, the oscillation of an atom, all different ways of measuring rhythm, all different ways of translating the whisper of the universe into moments you can count. And you realize that in every case, time is not the object but the flow, the passage, the change itself, and you're always within it, carried by it whether you notice or not. You reflect gently on how much trust you place in time, how schedules, seasons, and lifetimes are all built on the assumption that time is steady. And yet you will soon learn that the steadiness is only local, only approximate, that under certain conditions, time bends, just as space bends. And this knowledge makes you feel small and yet connected, a participant in a universe far more fluid than you once thought. You breathe again slowly, your chest rising and falling, and you feel how your own breath could be a clock. Each inhale and exhale a marker, and if you close your eyes and drift, you may feel as though time itself is slowing with you, stretching as your thoughts dissolve into calm, and you realize that perception itself is part of the story, that how you feel time is as real as how physics measures it, both truths woven together. You let this awareness cradle you, and you reflect softly that the quiet rhythm of time is not only a background to your life, but the stage upon which everything unfolds, every story, every science, every dream. And as you sink deeper into rest, you sense that the rhythm is about to change. Then in the next chapter, you will begin to notice how motion alters time, how speed itself reshapes the flow of moments. And so your last thought here is gentle, unresolved, inviting, if time feels so steady. Now, what happens when you begin to move faster? When speed itself begins to stretch the seconds you thought were unchanging? You breathe deeply now, the gentle rhythm of time still pulsing quietly in your awareness. And as you let your thoughts drift forward, you begin to notice how motion weaves itself into that rhythm, how every step you take, every beat of your heart, every turning of the earth is a kind of movement, and how the very sense of time you carry is bound the way things move. For without change, without motion, time itself would feel meaningless, like a still pond without ripples, silent and unmarked. And so you start by imagining the simplest motions, the slow sway of a branch in the wind, the roll of a wave toward the shore, the quiet arc of a pendulum, and you notice how soothing these movements are, how they carry with them a rhythm that your body naturally mirrors. And yet beneath this calm you sense something deeper, that motion does not only mark time but also shapes it. That speed is not just an experience of swiftness, but a factor in the flow of seconds themselves. And you rest for a moment in this thought, letting it unfurl gently. You reflect on how motion feels from within you, how walking through a quiet street seems steady and unremarkable, while running feels quicker, as though the world itself is rushing past, and how riding a car or plane shifts that scent again, making the ground blur and the horizon approach with new urgency. And though these are feelings, not physics, they hint at the way speed transforms perception, the way it stretches or compresses your sense of the moment. And you realize that even before Einstein wrote of relativity, humans already carried the intuition that speed bends experience, that motion changes not only what you see, but how you feel the flow of life. You breathe slowly and picture yourself looking at a clock while walking. It's ticking unchanged, but then you imagine yourself running faster, flying faster, until at unimaginable speeds the clock's hands no longer move the way you expect, and you feel the edges of wonder rise in you. For this is the nature of motion revealed by physics, that the faster you move, the slower your time flows compared to someone at rest. A truth so gentle yet so astonishing that it transforms the way you think of both time and movement. You drift further into this thought and consider how the universe itself is always in motion, how the Earth spins at nearly 1,000 miles an hour at the equator, how it races around the sun at 67,000 miles an hour, how the sun itself orbits the center of the galaxy, carrying you with it through the dark, and how even the galaxy moves in relation to others, so that stillness is never truly possible, only relative. And you let this realization soothe you rather than overwhelm you, for it means you are always part of a great journey, always moving even when you rest, always carried along by the cosmic current. You breathe again, slowly, and picture the stars above, remembering that their light has traveled for years, centuries, even millennia before reaching you. And you realize that seeing them is also seeing motion, that their light is stretched or compressed by their speed, shifted into red or blue depending on how they move relative to you. And so even starlight carries a memory of motion, the imprint of speed upon the fabric of time itself. You pause and let this image linger, the stars whispering their velocities into your eyes, every photon a messenger not only of distance, but of movement. And you sense how deeply motion permeates the universe, how it cannot be separated from time, how the two dance together in every moment. You drift now into the world of metaphors, imagining time as a river in motion as the boats upon it, some drifting gently, others racing swiftly, and though all follow the flow, those that move faster experience the river differently. their journey stretched or shortened compared to others, and you let this image rest in your mind, a calm way to picture relativity's truth. You breathe slowly and think of experiments that confirm this, of planes carrying atomic clocks that return with seconds shifted, of satellites whose time must be corrected because their motion and their altitude bend it. And though the details are complex, the essence is simple. Speed changes time. Motion sculpts experience. The faster you go, the slower your seconds pass compared to those who remain behind. And this truth, though strange, is real, and it is felt not only in labs but in the devices that guide you every day. You let this awareness soothe you, for it shows that even the grand mysteries of physics are not distant but woven into your daily life, that each moment you trust a GPS signal or gaze at starlight, you're already in dialogue with relativity, already carried in the embrace of motion and time. You pause here, breathing deeply, and you feel how your own body is a vessel of motion, how your blood flows, your cells shift, your molecules vibrate, your atoms hum, and beneath it all, particles swirl at near-light speeds, their motion fundamental to your existence. And you realize that the nature of motion is not only cosmic but intimate, not only in galaxies but within you. Each breath a movement, each thought a ripple of energy across neural pathways. You rest in this awareness, comforted by the idea that motion and time are not abstract but personal, always present, always part of your being. And you let yourself imagine what it would feel like to move even faster, to race alongside particles in an accelerator, to feel seconds stretch and minutes elongate as your speed bends time. And you recognize that this is more than imagination, that experiments show particles truly live longer when they move faster, their clocks slowed by speed, their lifetimes extended. And this fact prepares you for the next step in the story, the entry into the world of racing clocks in particle labs. You breathe once more, calm and steady, and as your body grows heavier with rest, you let the chapter close softly on a thought that is both gentle and unresolved. If motion itself can stretch time, then what happens to clocks that race near the speed of light? What do they reveal about the true nature of time's flow? And how do laboratories capture this whisper of the universe? You breathe slowly now, resting in the memory of motion's gentle rhythms. And as your thoughts drift deeper, you begin to imagine one man sitting quietly more than a century ago, his mind turning not with the noise of laboratories or machines, but with the stillness of thought. And this man is Albert Einstein, who listened to the world in a way few others could, who let questions echo in his mind like whispers until they revealed their truths. And tonight you follow that whisper, not hurried, not forced, but as a calm unfolding, a meditation on how one person came to hear the subtle secret that time itself is not what it seems. You picture Einstein in 1905, a young patent clerk in Bern, Switzerland, walking to work through quiet streets, his pocket watch in hand, his mind wandering to trains and beams of light, and you imagine how ordinary the world around him felt. Footsteps on cobblestones, bells ringing from towers, clocks ticking in shop windows. And yet within this ordinariness lay a question that tugged at him. What would it be like to ride alongside a beam of light, to chase it as though it were a companion? You let yourself rest with this image, imagining yourself beside him, standing in a field at dusk, watching sunlight scatter across the horizon, and then imagining what it would feel like to leap forward, faster and faster, until you were racing next to a photon, seeing it frozen or moving, and you realize as he did that this question carries strangeness. For light is unlike anything else, never standing still, always moving at the same speed, no matter how you chase it. And from this simple wonder, this quiet whisper, an entire new vision of reality was born. You breathe again, slowly, and feel the power of thought experiments, how Einstein's laboratory was not filled with wires or magnets, but with imagination, how his gift was to take the familiar, trains, clocks, light beams, and listen to them until they reveal the deeper laws of the universe. And you let this inspire you, for it shows that understanding does not always come from complexity, but from attention, from slowing down enough to hear what has always been there. You picture now the famous scene, a train rushing along the tracks, a passenger holding a clock, an observer standing on the platform, and light bouncing between mirrors on a moving train. And you notice how from a passenger's view the light seems to travel straight up and down, ticking regularly. But from the platform, the light appears to slant, traveling a longer path. And because light speed is fixed, the tick must take longer for the observer on the platform. And so time itself has stretched, slowed, bent, depending on motion. And here the whisper becomes clear. Time is not absolute. Time is not the same for all, but relative, woven together with motion and light. You let this realization sink into you, not as a puzzle, but as a gentle truth, a rhythm of the universe revealed. And you feel calm knowing that Einstein's whisper has guided the world ever since, shaping not only physics, but how you understand your own existence. You pause here, breathing slowly, and you reflect that the constancy of light is the anchor, the unchanging speed that forces everything else, space, time, simultaneity, to bend around it. And you imagine light as a river that always flows at the same pace, no matter how you wade or swim. And so the clocks and distances must adjust, stretching and contracting, keeping the river steady. And this image soothes you, for it shows that the universe holds balance even when it seems strange. You drift into the awareness that Einstein's ideas were not immediately accepted, that they were whispers before they became voices. But over time, experiments confirmed them. Particles moving in accelerators, clocks flown on planes, signals from satellites, all proving again and again that time is not rigid but fluid, and you sense gratitude that one person's imagination could open such a door for everyone. You breathe again, softer, and you feel the poetry in relativity, how it says that there is no universal now, that each being carries its own time depending on motion, that the universe is not ruled by a single drumbeat but by countless rhythms woven together. And though this may seem unsettling, it also feels freeing, for it means reality is richer, more flexible, more alive than a rigid clock could ever allow. You reflect on how this whisper touches you personally, how every GPS signal you use must account for relativity, how every experiment in physics labs depends on it, and yet you live within it without noticing, just as you breathe air without feeling its weight, and you recognize that science often hides within the ordinary, waiting to be noticed. You let your body sink heavier into rest, imagining Einstein's whisper carried on the wind, passing from his mind to papers, from papers to experiments, from experiments to the fabric of your daily life. And you see how the quietest thought can ripple outward endlessly. You pause here, your breath steady, and as you prepare to drift into the next chapter, you hold on to one unresolved thought, gentle and curious. If time itself can bend and stretch with motion, what happens when you watch clocks racing in particle labs, when subatomic messengers themselves reveal the whisper of relativity with every beat of their fleeting lives? You breathe slowly now, your mind still filled with Einstein's whisper, the vision of trains and beams of light lingering softly. And as you drift deeper into calm, you begin to imagine clocks themselves, steady tickers of moments, and how their rhythm changes when they're set in motion, not only in imagination but in truth. And this becomes a story you're entering now, a meditation on clocks that race, on seconds that stretch, on the strange but beautiful truth that time itself depends on. Movement. You begin gently, picturing a clock at rest on a table beside you, its hands moving in the steady way you expect, each second marked, each minute flowing into the next, and you feel the comfort of this constancy, the reassurance of rhythm that seems unchanging. But then you imagine lifting this clock and carry it with you as you walk, as you run, as you board a train, as you fly in an airplane, and you wonder, will it still tick the same way? For you, carrying it, yes, it seems unchanged for you and the clock move together. But for someone watching from outside, from a different frame, something subtle and profound begins to happen. The clock's ticks no longer align perfectly with the one left behind. Its rhythm stretches, its seconds expand, and so time itself is shifted, gently but undeniably, and you pause here, breathing slowly, letting this realization settle. You imagine two twins now, one staying home, the other fly away on a ship that races close to the speed of light, and each carries a clock, each carries their own heartbeat, their own rhythm of seconds, and while they are apart, each feels normal, each feels steady, but when they reunite, they discover a difference, one older than the other, one having lived more seconds than the other, not because of trickery or illusion, but because motion itself bent the flow of time, and you let yourself. Feel how astonishing and how gentle this truth is, how it reveals that there is no single time for all, but many times woven together, each bound to motion, each relative to its frame. You breathe again, letting your awareness drift to the laboratories where this is no longer only thought experiment but measured reality, where atomic clocks have been flown on airplanes, carried in satellites, placed on fast-moving craft, and when they return, they no longer match the ones that stay behind. The difference is small but precise, seconds stretched by speed and gravity alike, and you sense awe at how such delicate truths can be captured in the heartbeat of machines. You reflect on how atomic clocks themselves work, not with pendulums or springs, but with atoms vibrating at their natural frequency, cesium oscillating more than 9 billion times per second, a rhythm so fine it becomes the very definition of second. And you imagine these atoms ticking away, tiny motions marking the passage of time, and how when the clock moves faster, those oscillations stretch, slowing relative to another, and the very definition of time bends. You pause, letting your body sink heavier into rest, and you imagine particle labs now, places where not only clocks but particles themselves reveal the bending of time, where muons born in cosmic rays fall toward Earth, living longer than they should because their internal clocks are slowed by their near-light speed, where protons whirl in accelerators for hours, though their lifespan should be fleeting. And all of this is proof that clocks in motion truly change, that relativity is not a whisper, but a chorus sung by the smallest particles. You breathe softly and picture this as a story of patience, of clocks that do not rebel or resist, but simply flow with their speed, ticking gently at a different rhythm, reminding you that time is elastic, not fixed, and you let this thought soothe you, for it means you live a universe more fluid than rigid, more like a river than a machine. You imagine again your own breath as a clock, your own heartbeat as a metronome, and you wonder gently what would happen if you raced near light, if your body's clock stretched too, if your life slowed compared to those you left behind, and you realize this is not science fiction, but science itself, a truth confirmed again and again, and though it may never touch you personally, it touches your imagination. It deepens your sense of belonging to a cosmos where even time is alive with change. You pause here, your mind steady, your body calm, and you let yourself reflect on the symbolism of it. That clocks in motion remind you there is no universal center, no single perspective that rules all, but many perspectives, each valid, each true within itself, and that truth itself can be flexible, not broken but woven, not rigid but relational, and this thought softens you, for it shows that even in difference there is harmony, even in relativity there is unity. You breathe once more, deeply, and you sense that the story is beginning to turn again, for clocks in motion reveal the bending of time, then what anchors this bending is the speed of light itself, the unchanging constant around which all else must adjust. And so as you drift toward the next chapter, your last thought here is gentle and unresolved. If every clock bends and every rhythm shifts, then what is it about light that never changes? What secret makes it the silent guardian of time? You breathe slowly now, resting in the thought of clocks that stretch and bend with motion. Their ticks no longer absolute but relative to the paths they follow. And as you sink more deeply into calm, you begin to notice that at the heart of this mystery lies something constant, something unchanging, something that serves as the anchor to which all else adjusts, and that something is the speed of light, the most steadfast whisper in the universe, always the same no matter how you move, no matter how fast you chase it, no matter where you stand. And tonight you let yourself drift into the secret, this constant, this strange and beautiful law that has become the silent guardian of time itself. You begin by imagining yourself in a dark room, holding a lantern, and when you lift it and open its shutters, beams of light spill outward, racing into the distance at nearly 300,000 kilometers per second. And you imagine someone standing still, watching, and another running after the light with all their might, and yet both will measure its speed as the same, neither faster nor slower. And you pause here, breathing gently, for this is unlike anything else you know. If you throw a stone and chase it, its speed relative to you changes. But with light, there is no catching, no falling behind, only constancy, only this cosmic limit that all must honor. You let this image deepen, picturing trains rushing through night, each carrying a lantern, and passengers inside measuring the beams, while observers outside do the same, and still, always, they find the same result, the same unyielding number. And you realize as Einstein did that if light speed is always constant, then time and space themselves must bend to keep the rule. Clocks must slow, lengths must contract, simultaneity itself must dissolve, and you feel wonder rise in you, not as alarm but as awe, that the universe shapes itself around this constant, as though light speed is a thread woven to the fabric of reality, holding it together. You breathe again, slowly, and you reflect on why this is so important, how this constancy means that nothing with mass can ever reach light speed, for do so will require infinite energy, how it sets the ultimate limit to motion, and yet how generous it is, for it also ensures that causality, the order of events, remains preserved, that messages cannot outrun light, that the cosmos has a rhythm of communication that no one can break. You pause here, picturing light not only as beams, but as the very foundation of measurement. The definition of a meter tied to how far light travels in a fraction of a second. The definition of a second tied to vibrations of atoms illuminated by light. And you realize that the very units you use to count and measure are already anchored in light's constancy, that without it, time and distance will be undefined, drifting, unstable, and this realization comforts you, for it shows that the universe, though flexible, carries a steady song beneath it all. You let your thoughts wander to how this has been tested over and over by satellites and lasers, by particle accelerators and cosmic rays, by every method possible, and always light keeps its promise. Always its speed remains unchanged, a secret revealed again and again but never broken. And you feel gratitude for this reliability, this trust woven into the cosmos. You drift into metaphor now, picturing light as a great river flowing through the universe, and all boats, no matter how they move, always see the river flowing past at the same pace. And so the boats must change instead, their clocks slowing, their distances contracting, their perspectives adjusting, and this is relativity, the world bending so that light remains steady. You breathe softly, and you imagine photons themselves, the particles of light, without rest frames of their own, existing only as motion, carrying no sense of time, no ticking of seconds, and you reflect gently that in their journey they are timeless, born in the sun and striking your eye 8 minutes later. But for them, in their own strange perspective, no time has passed at all, their birth and their arrival the same instant, and you let this thought cradle you, for it shows that time is not universal, not even definable in the same way for all beings, that the universe contains perspectives beyond your own. You rest deeper in this awareness and realize that this is not only physics but poetry, that light, the bringer of sight, is also the bringer of constancy, the measure by which reality holds together, the silent metronome beneath the stretching of time. You pause here, breathing steadily, and you feel the story turning. For the speed of light is the secret that anchors time dilation. Then it is within the laboratories where this truth becomes most vivid, where particles racing near this cosmic speed reveal the stretching of their lifetimes, where muons rain from the sky and live longer than they should, where accelerators become arenas for racing clocks. And so as you let your body sink heavy with rest, you let the chapter close with one soft, unresolved thought. If light is the anchor, then what do the experiments in particle labs reveal about time's flow when matter itself races close to that ultimate limit? You breathe slowly now. Carry with you the stillness of light's constancy, the secret of its unchanging speed that bends the fabric of reality around it. And as you drift further into calm, you begin to imagine how this bending becomes visible, how time dilation is not only an idea whispered by Einstein or drawn in thought experiments, but something real, something tested, something unfolded in the quiet patience of laboratories and the open sky above. And tonight you let yourself walk gently into that unfolding, not with haste, but with the same slow rhythm you have carried since the first heartbeat of this journey, a rhythm that will guide you into understanding how time itself stretches when speed increases, and how this truth has been revealed again and again in ways both cosmic and intimate. You begin by picturing muons, tiny particles born high in the atmosphere when cosmic rays strike atoms, messengers from the depths of space arriving at Earth with speeds so close to light that their very existence becomes a proof of relativity. For muons are fleeting creatures, their lifetimes lasting only microseconds, so brief that they should vanish long before reaching ground. Yet you know they do reach, thousands of them passing through your body each minute, and the reason they survive is that their clocks, their internal rhythms, are slowed by their speed, stretched by time dilation so that they live longer than expected, their journey extended not by chance but by the bending of time itself. And you let this realization rest softly within you, that the air you breathe carries evidence of relativity, that the very particles raining silently upon you are testimonies to the unfolding of Einstein's vision. You breathe again gently, and imagine laboratories where scientists capture these muons, measure their lifetimes, Watch them linger longer than stationary ones, and confirm with precision that time dilation is real, not metaphor but measurement, not illusion but law. And you sense the patience of this work, the care with which every count of decay is recorded, every clock compared, every equation checked, and you feel comfort in the meticulousness of it, in the way the universe reveals its secrets not only through wonder, but through patience. You let your awareness shift now to particle accelerators, vast rings beneath the Earth where protons and electrons are pushed at nearly the speed of light, and within these circular vaults time itself bends, for particles live longer than their lifespan should allow. Racing endlessly like clocks that refuse to stop, their seconds stretched by their velocity, their very endurance a living proof of time dilation, and you picture yourself drifting inside one of these accelerators, floating among the racing particles, feeling seconds slow, moments lengthen, and the world outside moving differently, faster, as though two realities are unfolding side by side, each true within itself, and you rest in the strangeness of this, letting it soothe rather than unsettle, for it shows that reality is richer than you once thought, that time itself is not rigid but alive, elastic, unfolding differently for each traveler. You breathe more slowly, deeper, and imagine the experiments that carried atomic clocks aboard airplanes, one circling eastward with the rotation of the Earth, one circling westward against it. And when they landed, their times no longer matched, one slower, one faster, not by much, but enough to prove again that motion bends time, that even the instruments we trust most reveal relativity when moved with speed. And you reflect softly on how incredible it is that something so subtle can be measured, that science has built tools fine enough to hear the whisper of relativity in the ticking of cesium atoms. You pause here, sinking deeper, and realize that time dilation is not distant, not only for particles and planes, but present in your daily life too, woven into the satellites above you that guide your steps with GPS, each one orbiting fast enough that its onboard clock ticks differently than yours on Earth, and without corrections for relativity, navigation would drift miles off each day. And so every time you check your phone, every time you are guided by those signals, you are trusting relativity. You are living within its unfolding without noticing, and this realization softens you further, for it shows that even mysteries as strange as time dilation are part of your ordinary life, hidden in plain sight, serving you quietly. You breathe again and let your thoughts drift back to the metaphor of rivers, picturing time as a current flowing for all, and yet for those who race faster, the current moves differently, their journey stretched compared to others. And you see that relativity is not about breaking rules, but about harmony, about keeping light constant by allowing time itself to adjust. And you let this harmony comfort you, for it reveals a universe not chaotic but balanced, bending in ways that preserve the constancy at its heart. You pause here, your body heavy, your mind calm, and reflect that unfolding time dilation is also unfolding humility, for it shows that your experience of time, as natural as it feels, is not universal, that others moving differently carry different times. And yet both are true, both valid, both woven into the same fabric. And this truth reminds you that perspective itself is relative. That truth can be layered without contradiction. You breathe once more, slowly, and sense the story beginning to turn. For if time dilation is unfolded in the skies and in labs, then what comes next is to look more closely at the racing clocks of particles themselves, to stand within the great accelerators and cosmic showers, to listen to the patience of particles as they reveal relativity with every extended moment of their lives. And so as you drift toward rest, your last thought here is a soft, unresolved one. If particles themselves are clocks, then what stories do they tell as they race near light speed? What secrets of time are hidden in their fleeting, lengthened lives? You breathe slowly now, carrying the vision of muons in the sky and particles in a ring. And as your thoughts deepen, you begin to imagine what it feels like to stand above the vast tunnels of the Earth, where physicists have built enormous circles of steel and magnets, machines that are at once invisible and cosmic, hidden beneath hills and valleys, yet connected to the very laws of reality. And you realize that inside these tunnels particles move at speeds so close to light that they become living clocks. Their lifetimes stretch far beyond what nature alone allows. And this is where time dilation is measured not in metaphors, but in billions of revolutions, each orbit a heartbeat of relativity, each particle a racing clock whispering Einstein's truth. You picture the Large Hadron Collider in Geneva, a ring stretching for 27 kilometers underground. And within it protons whir around thousands of times per second, their energy so immense that their mass grows heavier, their internal rhythm slowed by speed, and you let yourself imagine drifting alongside them, your body carried near light speed, your seconds stretched so that minutes outside become hours within, and you feel a strange calm as though you have stepped into another layer of time, one that flows differently but truthfully. You pause, breathing deeply, and remember that smaller accelerators before it, at Fermilab and CERN in Brookhaven, all measure the same effect, catching muons and storing them in magnetic rings, watching them survive for microseconds longer than physics without relativity would predict, their decay slowed by their motion, their very endurance a proof that clocks in motion truly run differently. And you feel a quiet awe at how invisible these changes are in daily life, yet how unmistakable they become when you look at nature's tiniest messengers. You drift further into this image, picturing underground halls humming with magnets, detectors glowing faintly, scientists recording signals that show how long a particle lasted before it decayed, and you recognize how patient this work is, how careful, how filled with attention, as though time itself must be coaxed into revealing its secret, one event at a time, one particle at a time, until the truth becomes undeniable, that the faster you move, the slower your clock ticks compared to others. You breathe again, softer now, and you realize how extraordinary this is, that laboratories can recreate conditions otherwise only found in the hearts of stars or the showers of cosmic rays, that they can make particles live longer, travel farther, simply by moving them faster. And you reflect gently that this is not science fiction but daily science, that deep below the earth humans have built places where time dilation is no longer an abstract theory, but an ordinary measurement, where the stretching of seconds is a tool, a calculation, a necessity. You let your awareness expand outward, imagining the cosmic scale of this truth, how entire galaxies filled with particles and light also follow this rule, how the very radiation streaming through space is shaped by time dilation. And yet here underground you see it captured, mirrored in machines, made tangible in the glow of detectors, and you feel comfort that the vastness of relativity can be held in human hands, tested with human patience. You breathe slowly and let yourself imagine what it means to call a particle a clock, that each unstable particle carries within it a kind of ticking, a countdown to its decay, and that by measuring how long it survives a motion, you are truly measuring time itself, stretched by speed, bent by velocity, softened into something elastic, and you feel wonder that even the smallest flickers of matter are tied to the deepest structure of the cosmos. You pause here, letting your breath steady, and you sense how this connects back to you, that though you may never move at such speeds, your satellites above, your devices below, your navigation, your communication, all depend on the corrections of relativity, on the racing clocks of technology that echo these underground experiments, and you realize that you too live in a world shaped by time dilation, that even your quiet rest tonight is connected to the clocks that race above and below. You breathe again, gently, and you reflect on the symbolism of it. That truth reveals itself both in the vastness of stars and in the smallest particles. That time dilation is written into the universe at every scale, from cosmic rays streaking through skies to muons spinning in rings, from satellites orbiting overhead to the seconds you count in your own life. And this awareness comforts you, for it shows that your existence is woven into the same law, that you are part of a cosmos where even time itself is relative. You rest more deeply, your body sinking heavier, and you sense the story begin to turn. For these racing clocks underground reveal the elasticity of time. Then the next step is to notice how gravity itself bends time as well, how not only motion but the weight of the earth, the pull of mountains, the depth of valleys can slow seconds. And so, as you drift now toward rest, your last thought in this chapter is gentle and unresolved. If motion stretches time, then what does gravity do? How? Does the Earth's own breath shape the rhythm of your seconds? And what happens to clocks when they are lifted toward the sky or lowered into its depths? You breathe slowly now, carrying the echo of racing clocks in underground tunnels. And as your mind drifts further into stillness, you begin to imagine that motion is not the only force that bends time, for there is another hand that touches the rhythm of seconds, a quieter but no less powerful hand. And that is gravity, the pull of mass on the fabric of reality, the gentle but relentless weight of the earth beneath you, the draw of mountains, the embrace of planets and stars, and tonight you. Let yourself feel how gravity itself holds not only your body but your time, how the deeper you rest in its grip, the slower your seconds unfold. And this thought carries you like a tide into the mystery of general relativity. You picture yourself lying on a meadow beneath a mountain, your breath slow, your body heavy, and above you the sky stretches clear and deep, and though you feel only the comfort of Earth beneath you, physics tells a quieter story, that the mass of the Earth curves space and time itself, and that every clock at sea level, every heartbeat close to ground, ticks a little slower than those lifted high on mountaintops. And you let this sink into you gently, not as something fearful, but as something calming, a reminder that even the ground beneath you carries influence not only on your body but on your time. You breathe again and imagine two clocks, one placed deep in a valley, the other high above in the mountains. And though both tick with perfect rhythm, when compared, the mountain clock runs faster, its seconds unfolding more freely than the one weighted by gravity below. And you let this image soothe you, for it shows that time is not uniform but sculpted by the very landscape, that every hill and hollow reshapes the rhythm of existence in ways too subtle to notice, yet precise enough to measure. You drift further into this awareness, remembering that Einstein's insight was not only about motion, but about gravity, that he saw how mass bends space-time, how planets orbit not because of invisible forces pulling them, but because they follow curved paths in the bent geometry, and that within this bending, time too is stretched and slowed, so that near a massive body seconds pass differently than far away. And you feel all that this truth, tested again and again with atomic clocks lifted into satellites or carried on planes, is woven into the quiet fact that without accounting for it, GPS would fail, signals would drift, the world's navigation would fall into error. And yet here you are, guided daily by satellites whose clocks are corrected for both speed and gravity, living proof that relativity is no distant abstraction, but part of your every step. You pause here, your body growing heavy with calm, and you imagine standing at the edge of a black hole, the most extreme case of gravity's grip, where time itself slows so much that to an outside observer your moments stretch into eternity, while for you they feel ordinary, and you realize that this too is relativity, the bending of time by mass so great that the difference becomes infinite, and you let this image wash over you softly, not as terror but as perspective, showing you how delicate and flexible time truly is. You breathe again and reflect on how even here on Earth these effects are small but real, how clocks on tall towers tick slightly faster than those in basements, how satellites in orbit age more quickly than the people below. And you sense how comforting it is to know that science has revealed such hidden subtleties, that reality carries layers of rhythm deeper than what you notice, and you feel at peace knowing you are part of this great weaving. You allow your thoughts to drift into metaphor, picturing time as a fabric stretched across a drum, and gravity as the weight of stones placed upon it, bending the surface so that marbles rolling across are drawn inward, and in this bending the flow of seconds also stretches, slower near the weight, faster farther away. And you realize that this image, simple and gentle, holds within the vast truth of general relativity, a truth that connects the quiet pull you feel beneath your feet to the orbits of stars and the stretching of seconds across the cosmos. You breathe slowly and let this image settle into you, and you reflect that gravity's grip on time is not a prison but a reminder connection, that your seconds are shaped by the same force that holds a moon in orbit, that your heartbeat is paced within the same law that bends galaxies. And this awareness softens you, for it shows that you belong to a universe where even time itself is shared with stars. You pause here, your chest rising and falling gently, and you sense the story turning again, for both speed and gravity bend time. Then the next question is how these truths weave into daily life, how they shape the devices you use, the signals that guide you, the networks that connect you. And so as you drift toward rest, your last thought for this chapter is gentle and unresolved. If even satellites and phones depend on relativity to function, then what does it mean that you are already living within Einstein's universe, guided by the bending of time every day without noticing? You breathe slowly now. Carry with you the image of clocks ticking differently on mountaintops and in valleys, the grip of gravity stretching and slowing seconds in ways too subtle to feel, but too real to ignore. And as you sink more deeply into calm, you begin to notice that these truths are not only confined to the distant stars or to black holes far away, not only hidden in the underground rings of particle labs. but woven gently into the fabric of your daily life, guiding you even when you are unaware. For each time you check a map, follow a route, or glance at your phone, you will rely on a system that depends utterly on relativity, the Global Positioning System, or GPS, a constellation of satellites that only works because scientists learned to honor the bending of time by both speed and gravity. You begin by picturing the Earth, wrapped in a halo of satellites, each one moving swiftly in orbit, circling the planet twice each day, carried within an atomic clock of exquisite precision. And you imagine how these clocks, if left uncorrected, would drift away from those on Earth, their tick shaped both by their motion, which slows them, and by their height above the planet, which makes them tick faster. And you realize that these two effects, special relativity from speed, general, relativity from gravity, must be balanced together, one slowing, one hastening, their difference adding up to dozens of microseconds each day. And though this seems small, in the world of GPS it is enormous, for light travels nearly 300 meters in a microsecond, and a drift of even a fraction of this would make your position uncertain by miles within hours. You pause here, breathing gently, and you let this realization soothe you, that every time you glance at your phone to see where you are, the satellites above have already accounted for Einstein's equations, adjusting their signals so that you stand in the right place on the map, so that your footsteps are guided correctly, so that relativity itself becomes invisible but indispensable in your life. You drift further into this vision. Picture yourself walking down a street, turning a corner, watching the little blue to move on your screen, and you feel how ordinary it seems, how taken for granted. And yet above you, satellites race at thousands of miles per hour, their clocks ticking out of sync with yours, but corrected precisely so that you do not drift into error. And you realize that every step you take is accompanied by relativity, every journey quietly supported by physics that bends time itself. You breathe again, softer now, and imagine the engineers and scientists who designed this system, knowing that without relativity GPS would fail, that to make it work they had to acknowledge the stretching of time and build it into their models. And you sense the humility in this, the recognition that our technology must adapt to nature's laws, not the other way around. And you find comfort in this harmony, in the way knowledge leads to tools that blend the cosmic with the personal. You pause here, letting your body grow heavier, and you imagine the signals themselves, beams of microwaves sent from satellites, carried within the time stamps of atomic clocks, racing to your receiver at light speed. And by comparing how long each took to arrive, your position is found, a triangulation of time itself. And you realize that navigation is nothing less than measuring time with precision, and that relativity, by bending those times, has become part of the map, part of the journey. You reflect gently on how this connects you not only to satellites but to the Earth itself, for the signals cross oceans, mountains, cities, all flowing with light, all bending subtly with gravity, all corrected to ensure that you are guided. And this realization deepens your sense of belonging, for it shows that you walk not alone but in rhythm with the cosmos, your steps tied to the orbits of satellites, your path illuminated by relativity. You breathe once more deeply and let yourself drift into metaphor, imagining GPS as a kind of symphony, each satellite musician playing its part, each clock an instrument tuned not only to its own rhythm but corrected for the distortions of speed and gravity, and your receiver the listener, piecing together the music into position, into direction, into journey, and you feel all that this quiet symphony plays all around you without your noticing, guiding millions every day, a chorus of relativity sung in microwaves and time stamps. You rest deeper now, your breath steady, your body calm, and you reflect that this is a gift of science, that truths discovered in thought experiments, in mountain clocks, in underground tunnels, are not confined to theory, but flow into daily life, shaping how you move, how you connect, how you live. And you sense gratitude that Einstein's whispers become a voice in your pocket, guiding you gently without your awareness. You pause here, breathing softly, and you sense the story turning again, for relativity is already part of daily life through GPS. Then perhaps the next step is to widen the view, to see how cosmic rays, high-speed messengers from the depths of space, carry the same message, their survival across light years a cosmic stopwatch proving that time dilation is real on the grandest scales. And so as you drift toward rest, your last thought here is gentle and unresolved. If satellites above you depend on relativity, then what truths are written in the messengers of the cosmos, the particles that race across the galaxy carrying clocks of their own? You breathe slowly now, still carried by the image of satellites circling high above, their clocks ticking in careful harmony with the earth below. And as your body settles deeper into calm, you begin to imagine the cosmos itself as a vast observatory, a place where particles born in the violence of distant galaxies or the fiery cores of stars race across unimaginable distances to arrive here, to touch the air above you, to pass through your body in silence. And these particles become the next chapter in the unfolding story of time, because they are clocks too, fragile stopwatches at the moment of their birth, ticking down toward decay, and yet stretched into endurance by the extraordinary speeds at which they travel. And tonight you let yourself drift into their story, the story of the cosmic stopwatch, a story that reveals again how time bends when motion nears the speed of light. You begin by picturing cosmic rays, high-energy particles that fall endlessly upon the earth, not in gentle trickles but in steady showers, striking the upper atmosphere where they collide with molecules of air, and in those collisions new particles are born, among the muons, fleeting cousins of the electron, particles with lifetimes so short they should vanish long before they touch the ground. Yet somehow they survive, pouring through mountains, cities, and your very body, thousands every minute, invisible companions of your existence. And the reason they endure is because of time dilation, because their clocks are slowed by the speed at which they travel, stretched so that what would have been microseconds in their rest frame becomes tens of microseconds or more in yours, long enough to reach the ground, long enough to be measured, long enough to tell their story. You breathe again, softer now, and you imagine scientists setting detectors on mountaintops, in valleys, in deep underground chambers, counting the muons as they arrive, comparing how many should exist if time flowed equally for all and how many truly arrive, and the difference becomes undeniable. Relativity is not theory but reality, painted into the very rain of particles from space, written in the showers of muons that blanket the earth. You let this image soothe you, for it shows that the universe itself is always whispering Einstein's truth, not only in laboratories or satellites, but in the night sky itself. Every starburst and cosmic collision sending out messengers whose slow clocks reveal the elasticity of time. You drift further into this vision. Picture yourself holding a stopwatch in your hand, starting it as a particle is born high in the sky, watching the seconds tick as it races downward, expecting to expire before it reaches you. Yet it continues, its clock slowed, its journey extended, until it passes silently through you, stopwatch still ticking. And you realize that nature itself has provided experiments so elegant, so patient, that they unfold constantly without effort, proving relativity every moment of every day. You pause here, your breath deep and steady, and reflect on the symbolism of this, that life is surrounded by cosmic evidence of time's flexibility, that even when you are unaware, you are bathed in the messages of particles that have lived longer than they should, that have stretched their existence by moving faster than you can imagine, and this awareness softens you, making the universe feel both vast and intimate, both alien and familiar. You breathe once more slower, and you let your mind drift to the great particle accelerators where the same stopwatch effect is recreated, where protons and muons and kaons are spun at nearly light speed, their lifetimes lengthened, their clocks slowed, their decays delayed, and you sense how all this forms a harmony, cosmic rays from above and colliders from below, both telling the same story. That motion stretches time. That speed is a sculptor of seconds. That relativity is not an abstraction, but a lived truth in the very particles that pass through you now. You pause, your body heavy, your thoughts calm, and reflect that calling these particles stopwatches is not only metaphor but also physics. For each unstable particle is a kind of clock, a measure how long it survives before it decays. And when it moves fast, that measure changes, the tick stretches, the stopwatch runs slower, and in the stretching you glimpse the deeper nature of time itself, that it is not rigid, not absolute, but flexible, relative, responsive to motion. You breathe again, and as you rest deeper you let yourself imagine the cosmos as filled with such clocks, particles streaming through space, each one carrying its own measured time, each one whispering relativity as it crosses galaxies, and you realize that you too are a clock, your heartbeat a ticking, your breath a rhythm, your life a measure, and though you do not move at such extraordinary speeds, you share in the same fabric, the same bending, the same truth. You pause now, letting this awareness cradle you, and you sense the story begin to turn again. For the cosmos is filled with stopwatches carried by particles, then humanity too has always carried an imagination of time, a sense of its rhythm and meaning, not only in science but in culture, in myth, in poetry. And so, as you drift toward rest, your last thought for this chapter is soft and unresolved. If physics reveals time as elastic, what do human minds and hearts reveal about its nature? What stories and metaphors have we carried through history to make sense of the flow that carries us all? You breathe slowly now, resting in a vision of cosmic stopwatches raining down from the sky. Their ticking stretched by speed, their journeys extended by relativity. And as you sink deeper into calm, you begin to notice that time is not only measured by particles or clocks, but imagined by people, by cultures, by poets and storytellers. For long before Einstein whispered his truths, humanity already carried its own ways of seeing time, ways that were not equations but metaphors, not measurements but meanings. And tonight you let yourself walk gently through this garden of human imagination, a garden where time has been pictured as a circle, as a river, as an arrow, as a breath. And in these visions you find not contradictions but reflections, layers of understanding that echo the truths physics later uncovered. You begin by picturing ancient people watching the sun rise and set, noticing how day follows night, how seasons return, how life itself seems to move in circles. And you realize that for many cultures time was not a line but a cycle, repeating endlessly, each harvest echoing the last, each year circling back to beginning. And in this cyclical vision, time was not something to lose, but something to belong to, a rhythm of return, of renewal, of eternal repetition. And you let this idea soothe you, for it feels calming to imagine time as a wheel, carrying you not forward into the unknown, but around into familiar places again. You breathe gently and then let your awareness shift to another vision, the linear arrow of time, the sense that moments flow only one way, from past to present to future, never circling back, always moving forward, carrying you like a river downstream. And this vision too is familiar, shaping how you plan, how you dream, how you remember. And though it may feel less comforting in cycles, it carries hope, the promise of progress, of change, of journeys that unfold into new horizons. And you sense how this too is part of the human imagination of time. You pause here, breathing slowly, and you reflect on how poets have pictured time as a thief, stealing moments, or as a healer, softening wounds, or as a fire, consuming all. And you see that in each image time becomes not only physics but emotion, not only seconds but meaning, and you recognize how deeply time is woven into the fabric of human thought. You let your mind drift further. Imagine the philosophies of the East where time is seen as endless, a cycle of rebirths, and philosophies of the West where time is seen as a story with beginning and an end. And you realize that each vision carries comfort and challenge, each vision shaping how people live and how they die. And you see that science too, though different in method, joins this tradition, offering its own metaphors, rivers of space-time, fabrics stretched by mass, arrows, pointing toward entropy. And you recognize that the human imagination of time is always reaching for images, always translating the invisible into forms a heart can feel. You pause again, your body heavier now, your breath slower, and you notice how in your own life time feels different depending on mood, how joy shortens it, how waiting lengthens it, how memory folds it so that years collapse into moments. And you realize that even within you time is elastic, not in the same way as physics, but in feeling. And this recognition comforts you, for it shows that relativity exists not only in labs, but in lives, not only in particles, but in people. You breathe more deeply, allowing this awareness to cradle you, and you sense how imagination itself is a kind of time travel, carrying you into past memories or future possibilities, letting you inhabit places that are not here, moments that are not now. And you realize that though physics says you cannot go back, your mind does so every day, weaving time into stories, into narratives, into meaning. And you see that this too is part of the human truth of time. You pause, your thoughts soft, your body heavy, and you reflect that perhaps the greatest gift of the human imagination of time is not in accuracy, but in comfort, in giving shape to something otherwise invisible, and allow you to live not only in seconds, but in stories. And you sense that this storytelling is what makes you human, that to narrate time is to live within it with awareness. You breathe once more, slowly, and you sense the story turning again, For if imagination has always shaped how people see time, then physics itself carries one of the strangest and most unsettling imaginings of all, that now is not universal, that simultaneity is relative, that what you call the present may not be the same for someone else moving differently. And so as you drift toward rest, your last thought here is gentle and unresolved. If now is only local, then what does it mean for the idea of the present? What does it mean for the human need to believe in a shared moment? And how does relativity reshape even this? You breathe slowly now, carrying with you the voices of human imagination, the stories of time as circle, as arrow, as river, and as fire. And as your body sinks more deeply into rest, you begin to notice how personal and intimate the word now feels, how it anchors you to the moment you are living, how it seems so solid that you cannot imagine reality without it. And yet physics whispers something stranger, something softer and unsettling, that now is not universal, that what you call the present is not the same for someone else moving differently, that simultaneity itself is an illusion. And tonight you let yourself drift gently into this paradox, not with fear, but with curiosity, letting it soothe you the way a puzzle does when you know it carries hidden beauty. You begin by picturing two lightning bolts striking the ends of a long train at the same instant, and you stand at the center of the train, watching the flashes rush toward you. And because you are at rest with the train, you see them arrive together. So you declare they happen at the same time. But then imagine someone standing on the ground watching as the train speeds past. And to this observer you are rushing toward one flash and away from the other, so the light from the nearer strike reaches you sooner. And for them the events were not simultaneous at all, and you pause here, breathing slowly, letting this image sink in. For it shows that now is not absolute, that the order of events depends on motion, that each observer carries their own slice of time, their own version of the present. You reflect gently on how this feels, how unsettling it is to realize that there is no single universal now threading the cosmos together, but rather countless local nows stitched into a fabric that bends with motion. And yet you allow this realization to soothe you rather than alarm you, for it reveals that reality is richer, more layered, more fluid than your senses alone can grasp. You breathe again, softer, and you imagine space-time as a vast loaf of bread, each slice a moment of now. But the way you move through it changes the angle of your slice, so that your present may not be mine, your simultaneity not shared. And though this dissolves the idea of a single present, it replaces it with something deeper, a block universe where past, present, and future all exist, and your path is a thread weaving through it, each now a local truth, each slice unique. And this thought, though strange, carries a calm beauty, for it shows that time is not vanishing as it passes, but existing all at once, a grand landscape through which you wander. You pause here, your body heavy, your breath slow, and you reflect on how deeply human experience depends on the illusion of simultaneity, how conversation, music, touch, and presence all assume a shared now, and yet relativity says this is only approximate, that distance and motion dissolve it, that even the stars you see above are not shining in your now but in their own, their light delayed by years, centuries, millennia, and yet you still call it present. You still hold it as now, because your perception knits it together into something you can live within, and you feel comfort in this, recognizing that illusion too has its place, that shared stories of now are what make human life possible even if physics reveals a deeper truth. You breathe once more, imagining astronauts traveling at near-light speeds. Their slices are now tilted so that what is future for you may already be present for them. And though this seems impossible, it is only the logic of relativity unfolding, the stretching of simultaneity into relativity, the loss of a universal present giving way to a tapestry of local truths. And you sense how gentle this is, for it does not erase meaning but enriches it, showing that your now is yours, mine is mine, each valid, each real, each part of the whole. You pause, your chest rising and falling steadily, and you drift into metaphor, picturing time not as a line of soldiers marching in step, but as a field of fireflies blinking at different rhythms, no single flash uniting them all, yet together creating a glowing landscape, each spark real, each spark part of the whole. And this image soothes you, for it makes the illusion of simultaneity feel less like a loss and more like a harmony, a chorus without a single conductor, but beautiful all the same. You rest more deeply now, and you realize that what matters most is not whether now is universal, but that your now is felt, that it anchors you to your breath, to your heartbeat, to your rest, And though physics dissolves simultaneity into relativity, it cannot take away the intimacy of your own moment, the lived truth of presence. And you find peace in this, knowing that science and experience can coexist, each true in its own way. You breathe once more, letting your body sink heavier, and you sense the story turning again. For the present is not absolute. If simultaneity is an illusion, then what happens when you imagine journeys into future at near-light speeds? What happens when you picture ships race among the stars where time itself flows differently? And so as you drift toward rest, your last thought for this chapter is gentle and unresolved. If now is not universal, then what does that mean for the future? For the dream of traveling faster and farther? For the possibility of living days while others live decades? You breathe slowly now, carrying with you the unsettling but calming thought that now is not universal, that simultaneity itself is a gentle illusion, and as you sink deeper into stillness, you begin to imagine what it would mean to live within that elasticity, to turn it not only into an idea but into a journey. For relativity does not only dissolve the present, it opens a dream of faster journeys, the possibility that by moving near the speed of light, you could travel across decades while your own clock ticks only days. That motion itself becomes a kind of time machine, stretching and shrinking seconds, carrying you forward into futures unreachable by waiting alone. And tonight you allow yourself to drift into these dreams of faster journeys, letting them unfold not as urgency, but as meditation. You begin by picturing yourself aboard a spacecraft, silent and gleaming, lifting away from Earth, the blue curve falling behind, the stars ahead steady and bright, and as engines push you faster and faster, closer to light speed, you begin to notice how your seconds feel the same, your heartbeat steady, your breath calm. Yet outside, for those who remain on Earth, the minutes of your journey expand into hours, the hours into days, the days into years, and when you return, you will have lived. Less time than they, your seconds stretched differently, your life anchored to a different rhythm. And this is not fantasy, but the direct unfolding of relativity, a truth written into the equations of Einstein and confirmed in the laboratories of particles. And you let this awareness cradle you, imagining yourself not only traveling through space, but slipping into a future others will take longer to reach. You pause here, breathing gently, and you reflect on the twin paradox, the story of two siblings, one who stays on Earth, one who travels near light speed, and though they part for what feels like only a few years to the traveler, decades pass for the one who remained, and when they reunite, they no longer share the same age, their lives out of step, their nows no longer aligned, and you let this thought soften you, for though it carries strangeness, it also carries beauty, a reminder that time is not rigid, that it is alive, that it bends differently for each path. You drift further into the dream, picturing interstellar voyages, journeys to nearby stars that would take tens of thousands of years at ordinary speeds, but could be reached in a lifetime of travel close to light. And though the voyagers would live only decades, centuries would pass on Earth, civilizations would rise and fall while they cross the dark, and you sense both wonder and melancholy in this. For faster journeys open futures, but also distance you from your past, from the nows you once shared. And yet this too is part of the poetry of relativity, the truth that journeys reshape time as much as space. You breathe again more slowly, and you reflect on how physics is already prepared for this, how astronauts in orbit, moving quickly above the Earth, already experience time passing slightly differently, how their seconds are not quite the same as yours. And though the difference is tiny, it is real, a preview of the greater stretching that will come at higher speeds. And you feel awe that even now humanity lives within the edges of this truth. You pause, your chest rising and falling steadily, and you let yourself imagine what such journeys would mean not only for travel, but for perception, for meaning, for how we think of life and memory. For the dream of faster journeys is also the dream of the fragility of connection, of leaving behind the present you know to step into another. And you reflect softly that perhaps the true gift of relativity is not only in technology, but in perspective, in reminding you that your seconds are precious, that they are not the same for all, that each path carries its own rhythm, and that within this relativity lies the beauty of uniqueness. You rest more deeply now, your body heavy, your breath calm, and you sense the story begin to turn again. For if faster journeys stretch time and bend futures, then what happens when you return to the smallest scales, when you look at particles themselves, fragile and fleeting, and see how they too embody this patience, this endurance, the stretching of seconds. And so as you drift into rest, your last thought for this chapter is gentle and unresolved. If entire futures can be reached by moving fast, then what stories do the smallest particles carry in their stretched moments? What lessons do they whisper about the patience of time? You breathe slowly now, carrying the dream of starships racing near light speed, their journeys bending futures. And as you sink deeper into rest, you begin to notice that this same bending of time is not only written in grand voyages across the galaxy, but also in the smallest scales, in the quiet endurance of subatomic particles. Tiny beings that live for moments so brief they seem like sparks. Yet when they move fast, their lives are stretched, their patience extended, as though motion itself gives them more time. And tonight you let yourself drift into this patience, into the story of particles as clocks, fragile yet faithful, whispering relativity with every tick of their fleeting lives. You begin by picturing muons again, those cousins of the electron born in showers of cosmic rays. Their natural lifetime just 2 millionths of a second, and yet when they fall from the upper atmosphere at nearly the speed of light, they live long enough to reach the ground. Their decay is delayed by motion, their seconds stretched, and you imagine them as candles flickering, carried swiftly through the air, and though their flames should go out almost instantly, the rushing wind of their speed makes them last, their light reaching you against all odds, and you feel soothed by this image, for it shows that even the briefest lives can be extended by the grace of motion. You breathe again, softer now, and you remember that in laboratories too these muons are caught in magnetic rings, forced to circle for far longer than their lifespans allow, their patience measured with exquisite care, their delayed decays proving again that time dilates, that seconds are not equal for all, and you let this awareness rest gently within you, knowing that the universe reveals its deepest laws not in dramatic displays, but in the quiet endurance of particles. You pause here, your body sinking heavier, and you reflect that every unstable particle is a kind of clock, its decay a countdown, its life a measure, and when it moves fast, its countdown slows, its patience lengthens, its clock ticks differently. And in this you glimpse the truth that time itself is not universal but relative, bending to motion, stretching seconds into gifts. You drift further into the story, picturing protons and accelerators, circling at energies so immense their lifetimes stretch into near immortality, particles that should decay in microseconds surviving for hours as they race, their clocks slowed nearly to a stop, and you imagine walking beside them in the tunnel, feeling time itself move differently, your steps lengthen into eternity compared to the world outside. And this vision soothes you, for it shows that relativity is not only a law but a perspective, a way of seeing that even the smallest can carry patience beyond measure. You breathe once more, and you'll let yourself reflect on how comforting it is that particles confirm Einstein's vision so perfectly that they whisper his truth every moment, in every shower of cosmic rays, in every orb of accelerators, in every extended life they carry. And you feel gratitude that the universe is consistent, that its smallest parts reveal the same laws as its largest, that the patience of particles and the journeys of stars are bound by the same fabric of relativity. You pause, your breath deep and steady, and you allow yourself to wander into metaphor, picturing particles as travelers carrying lanterns of time, and the faster they move, the longer their lanterns glow, not because they resist decay, but because time itself leans to grant them more, and you sense a kind of gentleness in this, a cosmic mercy that even the briefest sparks are allowed to shine longer when they move with such speed. You breathe again, calmer, and you reflect on how this patience echoes in your own life, how sometimes moments feel stretched when you move swiftly, how experiences lengthen when your awareness shifts, how relativity at the level of feeling mirrors relativity at the level of physics. And you realize that both truths coexist, each valid in its domain, each reminding you that time is not a rigid ruler but an elastic fabric, one that bends both in the lab and in the heart. You rest more deeply now, your body heavy, your thoughts quiet, and you sense the story beginning to turn again. For if particles themselves can show patience, if their clocks reveal relativity so faithfully, then what comes next is to explore the edge of measurement itself, the pursuit of ever more precise clocks, atomic and optical, instruments so delicate they can detect times bending across a few centimeters of height. And so as you drift gently toward rest, your last thought for this chapter is soft and unresolved. If even particles can teach patience by slowing their clocks, Then what will the most precise human clocks reveal? What new whispers of time will they capture as science leans closer to the fabric of the universe? You breathe slowly now, carrying the image of patient particles whose clocks stretch and soften as they race near the speed of light. And as you sink deeper into stillness, you begin to notice that human beings too have built their own clocks, not fragile like muons, not fleeting like cosmic showers, but steady and deliberate. Instruments designed to press against the very limits of time itself, to measure differences so tiny that they reveal the bending of seconds across mere steps. And tonight, you let yourself drift into this pursuit, into the edge of measurement where physics and patience meet, where the whisper of relativity is caught not only in laboratories of racing particles, but in the quiet ticking of atoms suspended in fields of light. You begin by picturing an atomic clock, a device so precise that it defines a very second, its rhythm tied not to pendulums or gears, but to vibrations of cesium atoms, more than 9 billion oscillations marking a single second. Each beat steady, each pulse faithful, and you imagine the clock resting in a laboratory, its hands invisible but its rhythm perfect. And you realize that by comparing it to another clock nearby, physicists can detect differences not of minutes or hours, but of nanoseconds, of billionths a second. And within those tiny shifts they glimpse relativity itself. You breathe gently and let your awareness drift to experiments where clocks are lifted a few centimeters higher, placed on shelves above the floor, and already they tick faster than those below. Because gravity's grip weakens even across such a small height, and the difference, though impossibly small to you, is measured with certainty. Proof again that time bends with position, that the Earth itself sculpts seconds not only on mountaintops and valleys, but across the span of a human body. And you let this awareness soothe you, for it shows that relativity is not only cosmic but intimate, written into the space between your head and your feet. You pause here, your body sinking heavier, and you imagine optical lattice clocks, newer instruments, even more precise than cesium, measuring time with the oscillations of light itself, their precision so fine that they would lose or gain less than a second over the entire age of the universe. And you feel or rise softly within you, not sharp but calming, a recognition that humanity has learned to build machines that whisper in harmony with the cosmos, listening so carefully that they can hear. Time bend across the smallest distances. You breathe again, softer, and you reflect on how these clocks are not only marvels but tools, guiding satellites, shaping networks, allowing technologies to function, and yet beyond utility they serve as windows, revealing the subtle truth that time is not absolute, that it flows differently here and there, that each position and motion carries its own rhythm. And this awareness deepens your sense of belonging to a universe where every place carries its own time. You drift further into metaphor, picturing time as a vast fabric, and these clocks as needles tracing its weave, touching the threads gently, mapping the contours of its bends and folds. And you see that with every tick, with every oscillation, they sketch a map of relativity, a map that shows how seconds flow across Earth and beyond. And you feel soothed by this image, for it makes the edge of measurement not harsh but delicate, a soft listening to the universe's quietest song. You pause again, your chest rising and falling slowly, and you reflect that the pursuit of precision is also a pursuit of humility, that to measure time so carefully is to admit that your own senses cannot feel these shifts, that your heartbeat cannot detect the stretching of seconds, and yet you build instruments that extend your awareness, that let you share in truths too subtle to notice otherwise. And this thought comforts you, for it shows that science is not separate from life, but an extension of it, an expansion of perception, a way of touching what was once invisible. You breathe once more deeply, and you sense the story beginning to turn, for the edge of measurement allows you to hear the faint bending of time. Then what lies beyond this edge is the mystery of time itself, the river beyond seconds, the question of whether time is something that flows at all or whether it is a landscape already laid out. And so as you drift toward rest, your last thought for this chapter is gentle and unresolved. If clocks can measure every shift and stretch, then what are they truly measuring? What is the essence of time itself beyond the ticks and vibrations, beyond the seconds and the oscillations? You breathe slowly now, carrying the delicate image of clocks so precise they can measure time bending across the space between your feet and your head. And as your body sinks into stillness, you begin to sense that you have reached the edge of what clocks can tell you, the quiet frontier where seconds and oscillations no longer feel like enough, For beyond the tick of even the finest instruments lies the question of what time truly is, whether it is a river that flows, carrying everything along in its current, or a landscape that already exists, where past, present, and future are simply different places you pass through. And tonight you let yourself drift into this final meditation, letting the thought of time itself become water around you, slow and calm, carrying you like a boat downstream. You begin by picturing time as a river, its surface smooth, its current gentle, flowing from springs in the past toward oceans in the future, and you imagine yourself floating upon it, unable to turn back, unable to pause, only able to drift with the flow. And this image comforts you, for it matches the way your life feels, each moment slipping behind, each new moment arriving fresh, each breath and or dipping into the stream. And yet you pause here, breathing softly, and you wonder, is the river really flowing, or is a sense of flow only an illusion carried by your mind? You reflect gently on the block universe, the picture of relativity where all of time exists at once, where past, present, and future are equally real, laid out like pages in a book, and your life is not a drifting but a path already drawn, a line threaded through the fabric of space-time, and you feel the strangeness of this vision, but also its calm, for if all of time exists, then nothing is ever truly lost. Every moment remains, every heartbeat still inscribed somewhere in the fabric of reality, and you let this awareness soothe you, for it means that what is past is not gone, only placed in another part of the tapestry. You breathe again, deeper, and you reflect that physics alone cannot decide, that some experiments show the flow of entropy, the arrow of disorder growing, while others reveal symmetry in time's laws. And you realize that part of the mystery of time lies not in its measurement, but in its meaning, in how it is lived and felt, in how you call one moment now and the next moment later, even though both may exist together. And this realization softens you, for it shows that time is not only a physical truth, but also a human one, woven from perception and memory. You pause here, your body heavy, and you let yourself drift into metaphor once more, picturing time as a river in which you float, but also as a garden in which you walk, paths already laid out but chosen one by one, each turn a present, each flower a moment. And you realize that both images can be true, that time can be lived as flow and as landscape, both soothing, both real in their own way. You breathe slowly, your chest rising and falling, and you sense how this journey through relativity has returned you to something ancient and simple, to the rhythm of your heartbeat, to the ticking of clocks, to the flow of days and nights. And you understand that even if physics dissolves simultaneity, bends seconds, stretches lives, what matters most is how you live within your own slice of time, how you breathe within your own now, how you rest within the flow that is given to you. You pause, and you imagine the universe itself breathing, galaxies drifting, stars burning, particles racing, each carrying their own rhythm, their own clock, and together forming a vast symphony of time. And you realize that you too are part of this music, your seconds a note, your life a melody woven into the greater song. And this thought comforts you, for it shows that you belong to the river beyond seconds, that you are carried within its currents as naturally as starlight, as peacefully as breath. You rest deeply now, your body heavy, your breath slow, and you sense the story reaching its close, not as an ending but as a circle, for you have traveled from the quiet rhythm of your heartbeat to the elasticity of clocks, from the patience of particles to the bending of gravity, from illusion and now to the dream of journeys, and now to the river itself. And you realize that the whisper of relativity has become a lullaby, carrying you gently into rest, into the timelessness of sleep. And so your last thought for this journey is a gentle one. Time may bend, stretch, or dissolve, but here, in your breath, in your stillness, in your resting body, it is always enough, always yours, always flow like a river beyond seconds.